So welcome everyone to the Dating After Cancer session at Shine Connect. We're really happy to see you here. I'm just going to remind you one more time that the session is being recorded, but the three speakers are spotlighted, so you won't be in that recording. We're really happy for you to communicate any way you want, but if the chat is easier, that obviously audio won't come out on the recording then. We won't mention your names or anything if we're responding to the chat, just to let you know. So we know that dating at any time can be a bit of a stress and a challenge. Dating after cancer obviously comes with a whole additional set of challenges. Time when you might be feeling sort of physically less confident, emotionally more vulnerable perhaps, like the thought of putting yourself out there can be really tough. So I've got some wonderful people here with me that we're going to talk a little bit today about the two main obstacles that we hear about when we talk about dating after cancer. The first thing we're going to talk about is confidence. How to find your confidence again when all your experiences that you might have had have really knocked it, because that can be one of the biggest barriers really to kind of getting back out there. And secondly, we're going to talk a little bit about how we talk about what we've been through. So how you tell someone that you've got a cancer diagnosis, had a cancer diagnosis, or going through treatment, had treatment a while ago, whatever your situation may be, how to broach that subject with someone on a first date, or not on a first date, any date, at any point when you're dating, and how to have those potentially difficult conversations. So we just want to acknowledge up front that there isn't, unfortunately, a foolproof three-step technique to dating that will just make it all magically easy, and we wish we could give you sort of answers that were prescriptive and worked, but we found that really firstly acknowledging the challenges that come with it, with people who really get it, with other people who know exactly what you're going through, that in itself can be really helpful. But we also will have some top tips, things we found helpful. Ali's going to talk to us a little bit about confidence and coaching. So hopefully we'll cover some things that you can take away, but also just let you know that you're not on your own feeling the way you do. So first off, I want to introduce properly my lovely co-panel. Ali, can I hand over to you to do a little introduction?
Sure. Hello everyone, my name's Ali. I'm a cancer survivor and a confidence coach from Barry in South Wales. I was diagnosed with osteosarcoma, which is a type of bone cancer, when I was 14 going on 15. So I had 9 months of chemo and surgery to swap the affected bone in my leg out for a titanium joint. And it was when I finished my treatment that I think the effect on my mental health kind of kicked in a little bit, and my confidence was at rock bottom. So during one of the lockdowns, I think it was the very first lockdown that we had a couple of years ago, I trained as a confidence coach to help others who need to build up their own self-belief after cancer. And also I was working with other women who just wanted their confidence boosted in terms of job interviews and career progression as well. So yeah, that's me, and I'm really happy to be here today to talk about dating after cancer and with cancer. So thank you.
Thanks so much, Ali. That's fabulous. And Tatum, I'm going to hand over to you.
Yeah, so hi everyone. I've been around Shine wearing a lot of different hats for about 9 years now. I had breast cancer at 35. I had my ovaries removed, so but couldn't have HRT. So that led me into a really menopausal state, which actually really did affect how I felt about dating and how I felt about myself. I'm a yoga teacher as well. I trained after being diagnosed to be a massage therapist. And I think a lot of that was trying to like figure out my own body, figure out what's going on with my emotions, my mood, my anxiety. I'm really happy to share that information. Yeah, so that's why I wear so many different hats with Shine. So sometimes teaching yoga, sometimes doing the podcast, Not Your Grandma's Cancer Show. Yeah, sharing really anything if it might be useful to somebody else.
Thanks so much, Tatum. And I suppose I should introduce myself as well. I'm Claire, and I work with Shine now, but I was a member from about 8 or 9 years ago as well. I had a Ewing's osteosarcoma it was diagnosed when I was 17 and was sort of treated into my 20s. And I now live with quite a few tricky long-term effects of that. I'm sort of still managing chronic health problems. So over the years, I have definitely tried many forms of dating, some successfully, some not, but hopefully we can bring some of that experience to the session today. So we said we'd start talking firstly about confidence and building confidence after cancer. I'm going to hand over to Ali in a little minute because she's got far more to say on this than I have, far much more wisdom to share with you. But I thought I'd first just check in with you, Tatum, about how your treatment and diagnosis impacted your confidence to sort of, I mean, in and of itself, but also to kind of get out there and start dating or be in that dating world.
Yeah, so I was not in a great place for a number of different reasons. I had to move country because my mum was also diagnosed 4 months after me. So I wasn't, and I lived out of the country for 15 years. So I came back to take care of her. And then, yeah, it was just like I was thrust into this, you know, kind of whole new old life that I had left without like my friends, and like, you know, like your friends sometimes can be that reflection of who you were. And I didn't have that in my life. And I lost that essential feeling that I was even a person. Like I felt so broken and I felt like no one would ever want me. And I also wasn't sure that I wanted someone, because the idea of being intimate, the idea of someone touching me just felt so alien at that point in time, that, yeah, I felt completely broken. So like my confidence, I don't even know what number I'd give it. It was like completely flatlined, if not going straight down. So yeah, so that was the place that I kind of began from. You know, it took a while to put it together, but that was a time that it actually I would have been way too vulnerable to be dating, because even like the normal knocks of dating would have decimated me. Like I had no shell to kind of keep myself safe at that time. So
yeah. It's a really tough thing, isn't it? And like similar to you, I came out of treatment and was, you know, emotionally all over the place, but also physically was just I'd lost lots of weight. I didn't have any hair still. I hadn't been around people. I'd been so isolated through my treatment, just being around people in a social, I'd kind of forgotten to have to do small talk. I was like, all I can talk about these really intense experiences, and that doesn't feel like something maybe that you should be doing on a first date. I don't know. So yeah.
Well, that's part of it, is you feel so heavy. Well, I mean, that's how I felt. Like the lightness, like even if I, you know, did meet someone, it was like how to even have a light conversation when everything was around the next scan. If you were going from one scanxiety to the next scanxiety, it was like, how do you even, you know, and at one point I couldn't walk for more than 10 minutes without having to sit down. And so like, I felt like a little old lady. I felt like I was 105, you know. My friend came out with me one day and I was like, so we're going around the shops taking 10-minute breaks to sit down. And finally I saw a coffee shop and I was like, I'll wait here with the bags. And it really just, it was like going shopping with your grandma, you know, where she just sits down at the end and says, go on, like, I'll be here at the end.
Absolutely. And this kind of, I mean, from both of our experiences, really, it sounds like such a critical point of this is working out the timings. Like, are you ready? Like, when is the right time? And I know, Ali, we were talking a bit about that before. So I'm going to sort of pass over to you to talk a little bit about that, and then let us know about confidence. Tatum, yes, sorry.
I did want to just say though that, like, although my confidence was at an all-time low, I do know someone who had her first threesome in the middle of chemo, which, you know, like, I mean, I think some people are doing it, right? Some people are having a ball. And I think it's also really important to like share that story as well, because some people like are not necessarily encumbered by all of that, and you know, are yeah, going out there with their bald head and everything else. So I think it is really individual, and I think that's,
and absolutely, like we're saying, it's about timing, isn't it? Is the timing right for you? Not just there's no rule about
exactly
3 months later it will be fine. It's just how you work that out for yourself.
Yeah.
And I know Ali's got some words and wisdom to say on this.
Yeah, so I think a big part of it is you don't want to feel pressured to go out there and have those experiences. Like Tatum was saying, some people kind of feel liberated, but others might feel heavy and like they have all this kind of baggage now. So you do need to make sure that you're kind of truly ready to put yourself out there. Otherwise, you could be putting yourself through a lot of unnecessary stress on top of everything else that you've just experienced. And certainly for me and a lot of other people I've spoken to, cancer can change so much about your life, including your perspective and your priorities as well. So you might kind of notice a difference from the person you used to be before a cancer diagnosis when you'd go out on dates in the past. And it's really about kind of getting to understand what you want out of dating and whether you're ready for it. So getting to know the person you are now, the one who is going through cancer treatment or has finished cancer treatment and is kind of forging this new path. I've always said to people that I've worked with, spend some time alone building yourself back up first. So you could do things like meditation, taking yourself on kind of solo dates. Something that might help is writing down kind of a profile of this new you. So noting down what's important to you, what's important for you in someone you're dating, and how you kind of want your life to look. Are you looking for someone to kind of settle down with, or are you just wanting to get out there and kind of meet new people? So writing down all of those things can help you to kind of make sense of what you want to get out of dating and whether you're actually ready to get out there again. It sounds really cliche and really cheesy, but I always say that confidence starts with self-love, and it's all about kind of loving yourself first before you go out there and kind of meet new people. So there are 4 aspects to the self. So the physical, the mental, the emotional, and the spiritual. And I've handed Claire a document which should be in the resources section, which gives you some prompts to help you think about how you'll look after each aspect of yourself. But for the sake of time, I know we've only got an hour today, so I wanted to focus on the kind of the physical aspect, because your body does go through so much when you've been diagnosed with cancer. And I know that's something that a lot of people, including myself, are kind of affected by and lack confidence in. And your body goes through a lot. It might change quite dramatically. I had to learn to walk again, so that was a big thing for me. I didn't want to kind of walk with a limp or anything. I didn't want to stand out in any way. So being a teenager, obviously a self-conscious teenager, that was a big thing for me. But it might take time for you to kind of get used to your body, how it is now. And you need to make sure that you feel comfortable with yourself before you think about getting physical with someone else, essentially. So somebody told me this, and I think it's a really great tip, is just to start small, just buy yourself a nice rich moisturizer and spend some time moisturizing your skin, showing yourself a bit of love and reconnecting with your body again, and kind of understanding me with my leg, for instance. There's parts of it now which are still numb. It's a different shape to how my other leg is. It's quite different, and you're actually taking the time to understand how my body is now, what my body is like now, how it feels to me. It can help you to kind of start to think of your body as something to be grateful for, I suppose, instead of being frustrated by it, and you start to kind of show yourself a bit of self-love. Using affirmations as well, that's something that really helped me kind of grow my confidence. They need to be quite personal to you so that they actually really mean something. But you might use phrases such as, I'm grateful for my body, or I choose to be kind to myself. And there's another document in the resources section that can help you kind of craft your own affirmations. But I'd recommend repeating them to yourself every day. I have my own that I repeat every single morning as soon as I get up, and that helps me to kind of focus on the positives as soon as I get up to the day. Another thing to think about is, in terms of actually going on a date, is the type of clothes that you wear, this type of image that you kind of put across. Wearing clothes that you feel good in can massively boost your confidence. So when I think about how different I used to feel when I was going through chemo and I'd stay in my pajamas all day, it was a massive difference to when I got changed, got dressed, and kind of sat up a little bit, got out of bed and sat in the chair next to the bed. Even little things like that made a massive difference to me. But choosing something that you're comfortable in but also confident in is massive. So me, for instance, I can't wear massive high heels anymore. It's just a no-go for me. I've never really been able to wear them anyway, but now I definitely can't. So it might be that you don't want to wear massive heels. It might be that you don't want to wear a kind of low-cut top, but you need to find something that you're really comfortable wearing, but also makes you feel amazing about yourself. So kind of comfortable and confident is the way forward with that. Body language as well. In terms of your body language, going on a date, it's not just in the words that you're saying, it's the kind of way you're expressing yourself. So if you're just about to go out the door and you think, I'm really so nervous about this, there is a thing called power poses which you can do. So the Wonder Woman pose, like this, with your hands on your hips, you might feel a bit stupid to you while you're doing it, but if you do it for 2 minutes and kind of stand up tall, stand up straight, if you can, that kind of gives you that extra bit of confidence before you walk out the door. And finally, I'd say taking it for what it is and taking the pressure off yourself. Dating's a massive thing, especially when you've gone through cancer and you're going through cancer. And remember that even if your date goes really, really badly, it's just another thing to add to your story. It's another story you can tell people. It's not the end of the world. You've come through a lot worse. Relax and kind of enjoy the experience for what it is without putting any expectations on it, because at the end of the day, it's cancer is only one part of your story. You are a whole person with a lot of other experiences in your life and lots of other interests and things. So just relax and take it easy and kind of take it for what it is. It's just another experience in your life.
Ali, that's lovely. One of the things I could really hear in that, like one of the things I really love, you talked about like both taking yourself out on a date and also that difference between how you feel when you're in your pajamas and you haven't seen anyone for days, maybe you haven't washed your hair, or you felt so tired, is that there's something about so I used to call them yes days, and I used to dress up, and anything that came through I would say yes to, and I love that for one day. So I would so just say it could even be an email came through and I was like, yes, I'm going to go to this really strange odd event and I'm going to go by myself. And there was something about that, and putting on your makeup just for you, taking yourself out, and actually like knowing that you're kind of a good time just by yourself. Like you actually don't need to go with anyone else. You don't need to kind of and those days, like I never knew where they were going to take me, and they were super fun. And I think it was the beginning of like, oh, I had a story at the end, right? So it was kind of like a date, but without, another person being involved in it, which, one, super fun. You get a story, and really random things can happen when you say yes for a day. Obviously only safe things, but I
love that. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I've just got images of us all doing Wonder Woman poses all around the place now. I meant to say at the beginning, actually, if you have any questions as we go along, do feel free to put them in the chat. We can see the chat, and lots of hellos in there, which is lovely already. We will answer them, and we won't say your name, so you'll stay anonymous, but we can respond to those as they come up. But talking about confidence really kind of leads us quite well into our sort of second thing that we were going to talk about today, which is how to talk about your experiences. You know, we have a dating after cancer Facebook group, and we've run this session before, and the question always is like, how do you tell people what you've been through, and also when is the right time to kind of share that with someone that you're dating. Feeling confident about those kind of conversations can really take some time. So if we start off thinking a little bit about when might be the right time to bring up with someone, do you guys have any kind of instinctive approaches that you felt comfortable with or that worked for you?
I think kind of similar to the practice dates by myself, I think I practiced having that conversation because it comes up. I mean, for some people, it's going to come up because it's an obvious physical thing that other people can see. And sometimes it isn't so obvious, like maybe your hair is still a lot shorter than it was, or, you know, you're having to, you know, wear a different style because you're still like accommodating what's going on in your body. So like to you, you feel different, but like maybe it's not immediately obvious. But I would go to events by myself and sort of practice to see if I could have a conversation without mentioning anything. And usually it comes up, what do you do for work?
Yeah.
Like, you're like, well, I'm not working right now, you know, and people tend to, you know, really be shocked by that, right? And they want answers like, why, how can you possibly not be working? And so I practiced how to say it and where my intonation might go, you know, and like to see if I could almost say it flippantly. So I'm not advocating this is the way to do it. This was just like my particular trial and error. So, oh yeah, I've got cancer, you know, kind of like, and you know, what brings you here today? Like, just completely flipping over it, and then just like checking in with their reactions, like, oh, how'd I do? But not in situations where there was a lot of weight, like, you know, it wasn't like necessarily a colleague or, you know, someone that I was going to see again.
Yes, it's like trialing out like different times. Like if you tell it to someone when you first met them, is that a better reaction or a worse or a, yeah, I hear you. I mean, I know we talked about this before and found that actually sometimes that decision about when you tell someone is kind of taken out of your hands a little bit, and that can be quite tricky. So like you're saying, a lot of kind of first date questions tend to kind of touch on things that actually feel a bit odd if you don't really explain what's been going on, like, what do you do for work? And I was like, actually, I haven't worked for several years and I probably can't work full-time ever. And I know when I started dating, I hadn't really thought it through, so that I felt my hand had been forced, and then I'd just like tell them everything because it just sort of tumbled out. I'd be like, oh, okay, I'll explain, and it just said everything all at once. And you know, once I started talking, I kind of couldn't stop because it felt so much to me. So it's worth having a think, I think, about those kind of questions that might come up and how you want to respond. I know, Ali, you had a similar experience, didn't you?
Yeah. Well, for me, it was kind of the opposite of you, Claire. So somebody would mention sort of really little things like going for a run in the morning, or do you want to have kids, that sort of thing. And well, I can't run, I can't run anymore. And then that would obviously lead to a conversation about why. I can never run again because I have cancer in my leg. And then I would just kind of clam up about it. I just wouldn't say, I'd try and get it over with really quickly. Oh, I have cancer in my leg, but I'm fine now. Yeah, it's fine. And just kind of not really address it, which I don't think is the right way to go about it, because I was worried about what their reaction would be. So I was worried about making them awkward, because if I've made them awkward on a date, then obviously it's not a great kind of conversation to be having. So I was constantly worrying about, oh, I don't know if this is a conversation for now or for later, or I don't know. It is a really difficult thing to go through. But yeah, for me, it was, whereas you were like telling them everything, I would just kind of be like, oh, I cancer, yeah, that's it.
I think it brings us to, oh, sorry, I was just gonna say, I think it brings us back round again to sort of that actually the when is never going to be, there's never going to be one right time. And it's going to be about when you feel comfortable. I know, Tatum, we were talking before about it really varied for you depending on where you were at with your, in relation to your sort of cancer, and what was going on at the time for you would dictate whether talking about it early on was okay or not.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I think, you know, there might be times where it feels a little lighter, you know, like you haven't had fatigue for a little while, or, you know, things feel a little freer. And then, you know, you could almost kind of do the, yeah, it's good. And, you know, but then it would be totally different if you've just had a new biopsy and you're waiting for the results, like completely different. I just had a situation recently where someone from Hinge actually looked me up on Instagram. So before we even met, they texted me and were like, cancer? Menopause? Like, I had to have the conversation over WhatsApp about it. And I was like, okay, this is new. Like, even so many years later, you know, that thing of like how it comes up, and like where you're open maybe in another part of your life, or closed, or, you know, maybe some friends know or some friends don't, or, you know, I think all of these things, like where you're at, both kind of publicly, I think makes a difference, where you're at in terms of treatment, and how you're feeling about it totally makes a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And before we're going to move on a little bit to talk about, because I think a lot of this depends on how you want to have the conversation. So once you've worked out how to tell people, or what you want to tell them, because you don't have to tell them everything or anything, but really is working out what you want to say, then sometimes the timing can feel easier because you're just more confident in your story. Like, I guess the fear for me anyway was like that someone would want to know everything really soon and I wasn't ready. But if you've got a way, and if you've worked out in advance, actually this is how I'm going to talk about it, I'm going to talk about this in a minute, it feels less stressful and scary. But first of all, before we do that, I just wanted to quickly share with you, because there actually, I mean, I'll leave that there for you to just have a look at quickly, but actually there's been some research done on this. They found that they did a vignette study, so a small group of people, but they asked people who were dating, generally in the dating world, what they would expect or want or prefer if they were dating someone who'd had cancer. So we really are getting a little insight into the other side of the table, the dining table, if you're out on a dinner date or whatever. But the research said really that most respondents wanted to hear about the diagnosis after a few dates, and hardly anyone wanted to hear about it or felt they needed to before a first date. So really, it's, as it says there, people who have completed treatment can expect sort of find similar success in dating than people who've not had a cancer history and can wait a little bit to disclose their health. And it does say people who are being regularly checked, people might want to hear a little bit earlier, but not before the first in-person meeting. So I think we get a bit worried that if we don't tell them up front, then we're being deceptive in some way, or we really need to tell them straight away, or before we've met them, so that they know what they're getting. And actually the research seems to say that people wouldn't expect that. And like Ali said earlier, really it's much more, you know, you're more than your diagnosis, and they want to get to know you, and that might be part of it over time, but it doesn't need to be straight away and upfront. So yeah,
I was just going to say, like, one of the things that I found is that kind of along the lines of how you're feeling about it, is that I tried a very similar approach to what I did when I was coming out to people. So I remember when I was first like newly coming out, I'd be like, I'm gay. And there would be a response of shock. I mean, like, why were they shocked? Like, but I think they were shocked because I was still shocked. And then, you know, I don't know, like a few months went by, and you know, you're coming out all the time, like to different people at different times, you know, and they're like, oh, you know, where's your husband? And you're like, oh yeah, you know, my partner, well, my girlfriend is here. And I realized that no one had been shocked that I was a lesbian for like over a year. And I was like, where did all the shock go? And I realized the shock was how I was saying it. And I felt like there was power in how I was saying it. And so I kind of thought that maybe that would be a similar thing with this, that it would also kind of vary how I was presenting it. So
yeah, and that absolutely will change over time, won't it? It will be very different, the story you tell when you've just finished treatment to the one a little bit later on. So we've got a bit of a comment in the chat here. It says, is it like buying a car? You want to know the service history. Is the car in full working condition? If you say too much too soon, the other person loses interest. It's a great analogy. Thank you for that. And yeah, I mean, it is. I mean, effectively, I mean, it's not that having had cancer is an entirely negative thing that you're bringing. I know some of the best people in the whole world have been through treatment, some of my favorite people, and it makes them, you know, more experienced, empathic and interesting people. But ultimately, if you're putting just that up on your profile and people don't know the whole picture and they don't know you, they haven't got a lot to go on other than a health history. And I kind of think maybe you're right, David, it's too much too soon. That getting to know you alongside getting to know about your health might be an easier way for you.
I think that was an interesting thing, being diagnosed as a teenager as well. I don't know if you felt this, Claire, but I was still in school when I was diagnosed, and everyone kind of knew me as the girl who had cancer. And I didn't want that label to kind of follow me around for the rest of my, I prefer somebody to be interested in me for me and not take pity on me or whatever. So kind of not telling people straight away kind of fitted in nicely with that, because I could be open about who I was and my entire life, and cancer was kind of part of that rather than the whole thing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really good point. If people around you have known, and in an environment where everyone does tend to know, like school or even the office, it might be that everyone at the office now knows that you were off because you had treatment, and it can be a tricky thing. So yeah, it's great to kind of take the space to give yourself time to tell them about the whole picture, for sure. So we're going to talk a little bit now about how to have those conversations. And I know, Tatum, you sort of touched on it a bit earlier about practicing having those conversations, trying your story out in situations that maybe aren't as pressured. Because I mean, from my perspective, like when I first started dating, I hadn't really I hadn't gone around talking about my experiences very much. Like I didn't really want to. I kind of wanted to leave it behind me and just get on. But it meant that actually sometimes you don't want the first time that you try out telling your experience to someone to be on a date. I mean, that's like multiple pressures and so many levels. So actually practicing those, I think you're right, is a really good shout. Ali, you were talking about like sort of as well, keeping it simple, I think was your advice, wasn't it?
Yeah, because I think when I say osteosarcoma to someone, people just don't have any idea what I'm talking about. So I always kind of try to keep the language that I use as simple as possible, because we know probably all the medical terms about what we've gone through, all the drugs we're on and everything, but to somebody who's not had that experience, I think it can be quite overwhelming for somebody to hear all of that. They just kind of want the simplest terms, in the simplest terms, what you've been through. So I always just tell people I had bone cancer in my leg rather than osteosarcoma in my femur, and I've got a titanium joint that's a bit bigger than a knee replacement, rather than I've got an internal prostheses and all this sort of stuff. So I think keeping it as simple as possible can kind of help other people as well to really get a good understanding of what it is you've been through, rather than just hearing a lot of medical jargon that we've unfortunately become quite used to.
Absolutely. I think it's a great point. When I think back to, or I'm sure when we all got first diagnosed, like the conversations that were very medicalized could feel really bewildering and isolating, couldn't they? We're like, I don't know the language. If doctors are talking very medicalized jargon, You feel like, I don't understand what's going on, slightly panicky, out of your depth. And I guess over time we assimilate all that language and we pick it up and we understand it. But you're right, like bringing that out on a date is quite likely to make the other person feel the same as we did when we first heard it. So it's just kind of being aware of your language and how you're explaining.
You know, one of the things that you said, Claire, that I think is so lovely just to like also hold in mind, you're like, some of the best people I know have had cancer, right? And that's the thing, is that like, sometimes it can be hard when you're thinking about you, but like, if you thought of someone else, you'd be like, oh my God, they've got so much to give. They're like, you know, lovely, they're smart, like that. Yeah, like you said, empathetic, they're super cool, they're amazing to be around. Like someone would be lucky to go out with them. And it's funny when it comes to ourselves, how that just like dwindles away. But actually, if you were sitting there and someone else was telling you, maybe not cancer, but maybe something else that's, you know, big, you know, either health-wise or a huge challenge in their life, I think it's also like really interesting to think about, like, well, how would I respond? You know, like, and hopefully if I would respond pretty well to something like that, then, you know, actually maybe this is a way of weeding out maybe some people that, you know, you wouldn't want in your life anyway, because there's only going to be a certain type of person that's going to want to come along, you know, knowing that you're going to have some ups and downs from this. Like maybe this is a really good filter.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So when we're thinking about how to have that conversation, obviously we talked about practicing with people who are kind of neutral, making sure that you're comfortable with how you tell that story, keeping it simple. And also, I mean, it can still feel nerve-wracking, can't it, having those chats? And so we've got a bit of a structure, which you may like, you may not, but we're going to offer it to you and see what you think. It's a model of how to have some of these conversations. And it's called the 3Fs model. And it's worth just having a little think if whether this might be helpful to structure how you want to tell someone. It's a way of creating a kind of conversation or something that you're saying that kind of is very clear and open to the other person. So you start with the fact. And in this example we've just used, I've been wanting to talk to you about my health. I've actually been having treatment for whatever it is that you've been having treatment for. That's the fact. You move on to the feeling, and that can be whatever you're feeling about it. You know, you could be like, I'm feeling pretty chill about it. Like, you don't need to worry, this is cool. But, you know, another thing might be, I actually feel a bit nervous talking to you, as I don't want this to change the dynamic we've got. I think it's going well, you know, so just, it's a bit kind of, it's opening up a little bit to the emotional side of what you've gone through. Which can help with that connection. If you just barrage them with facts about medical, what you've been through, it can, like we said, it can be a bit distancing. But like opening up the very human side of it is like, I'm feeling a bit nervous right now, can actually be a really attractive thing. And thirdly is the finish. And this is to kind of introduce them and invite them into the conversation. So you're not kind of putting it up as a barrier. So it could be as simple as, have you got any thoughts or questions you want to ask? Like, I'm an open book, ask me anything, or whatever works for you. If you're not an open book, don't say that, obviously. It could be an open question. And I mean, this could even be, you know, have you got any experience with health problems? Or, you know, do you know anyone else who's had cancer? Have you got any experience? Like, allow them to share a little bit about their perspective on this front. So it can just be a useful model. These slides will be in the resource area as well. So if you want to have a look back at this and have a think about how you might structure the conversation. I think the key thing with this is to make the language authentic. So if that doesn't work for you, those 1, 2, 3, that doesn't, or you think that doesn't sound like my voice, go and rewrite it so it does. Because I think that's really important, is you don't feel sort of robotic and awkward in these conversations. But we thought we'd just share that with you. I think now we're going to move on. I'm aware of time, it's whizzed by. We're going to move on to some of our just top tips. They're very simple things that might just help you. I'm just going to check in the chat because we've also got some questions and comments. Tatum, would you mind keeping an eye on that while we
we've got a comment about anxiety, which I think is huge. And that was the big one for me. Anxiety is a problem all cancer patients suffer from, dating people are normally a bit anxious to be accepted and liked by the other person. So you're trying to deal with a double dose of anxiety, and that can put a downer on conversations and chemistry. And first date shows always talk about chemistry. So that was the comment. And yeah, I can really, really relate to that. And I think for me, coming from like a yoga massage background and everything, like I like to have like a couple of things that I can do to like ease that anxiety, you know, whether that be kind of like focusing on the breath or making sure that I've pre-thought it before going out. Like I've almost like imagined like a little bubble around me, so that, you know, kind of got a little bit of protection around me for that first date. Still want to be open, but also like not too open, if that makes sense. There's such a fine line, isn't there, between kind of like, here's me, and like, you know, then showing like your, you know, all your innards, right? Like there's that really fine line, and I think we do need a bit of protective coating.
We do, but I think also there's something, I don't know about you, but when I've gone on dates and you've met someone, they're like, how are you? And if they say to you, I'm actually a bit nervous, like I'm not great on first date, you know, like actually that can be really endearing. And it's like, it's never been something that's made me go, oh God, well, you know, like you just think, oh yeah, me too. Obviously everyone's nervous. No one's going to go dating feeling like super duper top of the world. It's just not how it works. So kind of, you know, acknowledging that you're feeling nervous can be actually quite a nice thing. I just noticed as well, yeah, I was going to say the question about, have you got any suggestions for people who ask direct questions about prognosis? It's a great question, because people can be super direct, can't they? I think it really, from my perspective, it really depends. Like I live with I'm in remission from cancer, but I live with a sort of incurable lung condition. So I have to face this, like, what does that mean for the future? Like, and actually my go-to is I tend to want to live in the immediate future, and I don't look too far ahead. So actually my knowledge about what the exact prognosis isn't all that clear, you know, so you can sort of just be vague about it, and you could say that even if you do know the prognosis but you don't want to share it, you know, like I think there's quite a clear way of communicating that actually it's not, you know, it's not all that helpful for me to know about prognoses, and I know that will help some people but maybe not others, and just kind of be light about it but not give them an answer that you don't want to give, would be my instinct. Do you guys have any thoughts?
I think
go ahead, Ali.
I think yeah, like you said, Claire, just being comfortable with what you want to share and what you don't want to share, and not having to share things that you don't necessarily want to talk about. I think that's something to really kind of think about before you go on dates as well, because you meet all kinds of people. Like you say, some people are really direct, some people are kind of might not want to know too much about it. So kind of, like Taysom said before, rehearsing what you want to say, but also understanding that you don't have to share everything if you don't want to. I think yours is kind of a really good compromise, Claire, and kind of being a bit vague but not necessarily giving everything away. But yeah, just being comfortable in what you want to be able to give to people, I guess, is really important.
And maybe you two are really nice, but like I might also feel a bit like, read the room, right? Like, you know, we're on a, you know, first or a second date, like, you know, I was going to say dude, whether or not they're, you know, however they identify, like that would be like, you know, if they asked it in a way, so I'm going to say like, if they asked it in a way that made me uncomfortable, I'd actually wonder about their ability to kind of, yeah, check in and see what's going on. And like, are they asking just so they can report back on their date? Do you know what I mean? Like to get a story, or, you know, and if they are really interested, then they can wait a little bit longer. And that should be like, if someone's going to ask a question like that, you need to have a relationship a bit more. Maybe that's just me. that's totally fine if it is, but like that would be my first thing. I was like, you know, you've kind of put me on the spot there, and that would be a little bit of my filter.
Yeah, I mean, they always in dating, don't they, talk about red flags, and that might be one of yours. Like,
I
if
think
people ask super direct questions that don't give you any kind of way to answer anything but the truth, then it might be something that just doesn't work for you, and that's all right too. Like, I think we can fall into the slight trap of like, it's us who have to sort of be flexible because we're the one with the illness, with the diagnosis, and we have to be the ones to understand that, oh, this is difficult for other people. You're like, so, you know, also people just could also be better. You know, like, just demand people to do that.
I think it's more it's having the confidence as well to be assertive with people and just kind of say, I don't want to answer that question right now, or whatever it is that you want to say. You don't feel put on the spot a little bit and kind of feel you have to, because I think when you come out of cancer or you're going through cancer, you feel like Jason was saying earlier, like you're the one with baggage and you're not worthy or something like that. That's how I felt. I felt like anyone I was going to be with, I would be bringing a lot of stuff to the relationship that they would have to take on as well. And I think having that ability that confidence to be really assertive with people as well is, if you can get your confidence up to that level, I'm still working on it myself, but if you can get your confidence up to that level, I think it's a really good strength to take into dating, just to have that assertiveness with you.
Absolutely. I think I'm just going to quickly share our top tips and we'll run through these, and these are available, so I'll run through them at breakneck speed, and I'm aware that we may well still have time to do some questions at the end. Let me
so quickly.
I know, it's whizzed by, hasn't it? So these are just some things that in the three of us talking we came up with that have been helpful over the years for us. So I'm going to quickly zip on. So we're going to share these out, so it's not one person talking.
Yeah. So this is to make it easy for yourself. Yeah. So, you know, if you feel the need to be assertive halfway through, you know, convenient location, exit routes, a situation where you don't have to be stuck. Because if they are a disappointment, then you can just, you know, feign that text and just get out of Dodge, you know. So yeah, coffee works really well. Quick drink works really well. Got plans later works really well. And yeah, just make it easy. You can always stay longer. You know, if it's all going good, you can be like, oh, actually, you know, my plans later got pushed a bit, so I've got another hour or whatever it is. But I definitely, you know, if someone doesn't have the reaction that you want them to have, or, you know, they're not what you thought they were going to be, that you can get out.
Absolutely.
Talking of texting, sharing the experience and having a few friends who know what's going on, so texting your friends beforehand or on your way for kind of words of support and encouragement, having that kind of little network around you, is always really great when you start dating again.
Absolutely. It's like having little cheerleaders in your pocket, isn't it?
Yeah,
people who love you and think you're great, just telling you that you're great, is really what you need on the way.
Always.
The third one, we've kind of covered this, so I won't linger on it, but take time to work out your story. Work out exactly what it is that you want to tell and how you want to tell it before you get there. Just like we said, practice with neutral people. You could try out that model, see if it helps in a way that feels natural for you, and then that might help you feel that the timing of that conversation, it might just feel a bit more, oh yeah, now's okay because I feel confident about it.
Yeah, the more you do, the easier it gets. Like, I think that setting out some practice dates, don't be put off by feeling exhausted by the first date. You know, that tension is going to be high, especially the first few after cancer, but like just knowing that it does get a bit easier as it gets a bit more normal.
Absolutely.
Giving the other person the opportunity to react in the best way they can, so giving them time to think about what you're telling them. They won't have a playbook either on the best way to react to what you say, so kind of give them a chance, let it settle in, and to kind of take it from there. Plan
what to say to end the date. So I don't know if anyone of you guys have found this, but I've been on some like 4-hour dates where I knew after 10 minutes that this really wasn't working for me. You're like, whoo, just sitting there kind of making conversation in a really awkward manner. Have an exit strategy so that if you feel it's not really working, that you're not stuck there with someone for hours, because I think that in itself feeds into what dates are like in our head. You know, we fill up this kind of memory bank of dates are stressful and awful because we've gone on these kind of dates where they didn't work out and we sat there for ages, and it was, you know, don't let that happen. Like we said, make the first date short and sweet and easy to exit if you want to.
You know, I was just going to say, I didn't listen to that rule once, and had a really fun first date that led me to waking up at theirs, but I was so hungover, I actually couldn't leave until 5 o'clock. I was so sick the next day. So I don't recommend that, but it happens. Just
and you just had to move in with them because you were too unwell to go.
It. Too tired to leave.
But our last top tip is, you will have dates that aren't all roses and fireworks, and it's really easy if you've been out of the dating scene for a while because you're not being well, or if you're just feeling nervous and anxious because of everything you've been through, it's easy to forget that that's quite normal. Like, actually dating is up, you know, has its ups and downs, and the fact a date hasn't gone brilliantly won't always, you know, it will rarely be to do with cancer. It will be, you know, it'll be to do with the millions of other reasons that people come with baggage, and we all have this, and it sometimes can be quite useful to talk to your friends who are dating, just to kind of get a gauge on that it is an up and down experience for everyone, because I think it can, like we said, it can knock your confidence, which already might be a bit low. So the top tip really here is, if dates don't end up in a relationship, that they don't really work, just count that off. That was a practice date. That was one where you tried it out, you had some chat, you were just warming up your stories, your anecdotes, but eventually those experiences will lead to the one date that does work and does work out, and you will have a relationship from. So think of this as just getting more experience rather than a bad date. So those are our top tips. Like I said, those are available in the resources section, with Ali's resources that she sent over as well. We'll just maybe finish with Emily's, I've said your name, sorry, with a comment about dating apps. It seems that there is a lot more scrutiny very early on when you're online dating and in the apps. And it says that can put the pressure on even more, and heightens the anxiety when revealing you've had cancer and what their reaction might be. The thought of potentially having to face people who say the cancer thing is too much for them is a really tough thing to think about facing, isn't it? And I really appreciate that. And actually, I found online dating quite tough. I must admit, I never really, I mean, I did it and I met some nice people, so it wasn't like it didn't work, and I had some nice short-term relationships from it, but I never found it easy. That anxiety didn't go away for me entirely. I don't know, like my thing really, what I did is I started to go to places that didn't require the dating apps. So I joined this massive choir in London, where I thought, well, there's like 800 people in this, I might, you know, just meeting people like in a different way, where you've already got that thing in common, and then it feels a bit more organic. So finding places, I know there are a lot more. There's something called Sunday Assembly now, which is like a kind of a Sunday get together in a non-religious context, just to get together to meet new people. I think a lot of people are in a situation where they want to meet new people and make new friends, or potentially new romantic interests, and actually there are more kind of in real life opportunities to do this. I don't know if you guys have any tips about the online apps though.
I mean, go ahead.
I didn't like dating apps at all. I just really didn't like the experience. Well, I really enjoyed it at first, but after a while I got really kind of tired of it, I suppose. And I think a big part of that was kind of opening those conversations and having conversations before you meet up with someone, and wondering whether cancer will come up in that conversation. I think for me, I had to change my mindset from, if the cancer thing was too much for someone to deal with, then they weren't the right one for me, and I just had to kind of say bye to that, and move on. Instead of it being a reflection on me, it was kind of a reflection more on them. So I would say just kind of working on to change your mindset a little bit more around kind of where that reaction comes from, isn't necessarily anything to do with you. It's mainly to do with the other person and what they think they can take on. But yeah, they're not the right ones, so move on.
Absolutely.
You've said that so eloquently, and that was, yeah, in a way that was what I was envisioning with the kind of bubble of protection. Like, I think so I knew someone, and she told a woman that she was on a date with that she had played Dungeons and Dragons, and the woman just looked her right in the face and went, yeah, not going to work with me, and she just left. Like, she had played Dungeons and Dragons and she was in her 40s. You know, like, people are gonna judge, right? And like, to some degree, if you feel confident about playing Dungeons and Dragons, do you know what I mean? You're going to be like, oh, well, all right. You know, but if you were feeling really insecure about it, then, you know, you're like, oh, and the next time, should I hide that? Well, but then the next time you might go on a date, and because you've said that, they might love it too, and it will be a completely different thing. Or someone else is going to be like, oh my God, I have this other thing that I do that no one else understands. And you've immediately got a bond. And so, you know, I think taking the time for your comfort, I think, is part of that. So if someone behaves in a way that's like, it's not going to work for me, that almost doesn't enter this space, that doesn't bring you down. And I think for me, it was about being confident enough that if someone said that, it's like, actually you can't hurt me with that. And
yeah, I was just going to jump in and say, like, actually, it's not a plug, but a really good space to practice kind of feeling more confident in a group, feeling more confident talking about your experiences, and in a room of people who will completely get it, and you'll just get affirmations rather than any negativity, is in Shine Me Touch. You know, you can meet loads of people who are just really going to be like, oh my God, you're awesome, you've been through this and you're amazing. And that's kind of really, I mean, it really helped me with my confidence in terms of across the board, like dating, but working, and, you know, talking to groups of people. Even like, I just got my confidence back through that process of chatting to people who are only going to say positive things back. So if you haven't been to a Shine event, come and try it out. Try telling your cancer story in that safe space before you go and take it on a date. I'm aware of time, and we've run out of time, but we have like I say, the resources are in the resource section, unsurprisingly. And I hope that we've answered your questions in any way we can. We've got a quick poll for you to fill in, if you don't mind. I'm going to quickly launch it. It'll take you 10 seconds, if that. But yes, and thank you for coming along to our dating session. Just so you know, there is a Dating After Cancer Facebook group that you can join, and we can have all these sorts of conversations in that group too. So it would be really lovely to see you there. I'm going to stop recording.